I am Tom Downey. Follow me on Twitter at WhatGoingDowney for more Cowboys coverage. And speaking of training camp, let's take a look now at some notable storylines, some previews, and what to watch for this year in Cowboys camp. And we start with a lesser battle, but it's an important one as we saw in the past. The backup quarterback battle. Now, Dak, despite what some of you guys like to think out there, is the unquestioned starting quarterback. Rush was the backup last year, but Mike White is going to compete and push for that job. I think that all three guys will make the roster, but the battle is who is the backup just in case the worst case scenario happens and Dak Prescott goes down. So who do you want as the Cowboys' backup QB? Give me an R for Cooper Rush and a W for Mike White. I think early on it's Rush's job. I think that Mike White has the higher ceiling than Rush does. That's also reflected as to where they were drafted or not drafted in Cooper's case. On to a more important one, the chemistry between Dak and his wide receivers. It's pretty much a brand new group. Dez is gone, Witten is gone, Bryce Butler is gone. In their places are Allen Hurns, Michael Gallup, and a whole bunch of tight ends that no one is super familiar with. So the Cowboys here and their wide receivers, it's important. Now, that's something that was not great at times during minicamp and OTAs. You got to get the players on the same page. That's why they took that little trip down to Florida with Dak and several of his wide receivers. Hurns and Beasley, Gallup, and probably Terrence Williams are all locked into spots. That leaves 1, 2, 3, if you want to count Tavon Austin, at most spots available for Deontay Thompson, Ced Wilson, of course Tavon, Noah Brown, and even Lance Lenoir, who is very familiar with Dak Prescott, those who have the good chemistry. So it's a battle for who is the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and who actually makes the roster. As for who will be the number 1 receiver, let me know in the comment section who you think will be the Cowboys' top receiver. I think in terms of catches, I think it'll be Cole Beasley once again. Now for the area that I am most concerned about with this Cowboys roster, that's at tight end. Jason Witten, James Hanna, they are gone. That leaves 9 combined catches at tight end this year for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Jeff Swaim, Blake Jarwin, those are your 2 frontrunners to be the starter, in quotes, at tight end, even though they probably won't make a huge impact through the air. But Swaim is a good blocker. Jarwin can bring you a little bit more in the passing game. And then there's Dalton Schultz and Rico Gathers. Now, Schultz will make the roster, barring some type of crazy scenario, which I'm not even sure what that is, maybe a trade for somebody. But Schultz will make the roster, but for Rico, not quite as convinced. The upside remains there, but Rico has to be a better blocker for a team that relies more on run blocking from the tight ends than any other team in the NFL, and he's got to be more consistent as well. He's missed quite a bit of time. The preseason camp will be essential for Rico making the roster this year. So, folks, let me know who you think should start at tight end. Is it Rico? Is it Schultz? Is it Swaim? Is it a trade? Is it Blake Jarwin? I think week 1 you'll see Jeff Swaim. I think after that you could see Blake Jarwin being the go-to guy there at tight end. One more note here for you on offense, namely, what kind of role is Tavon Austin going to play this year? And the role is going to be, as the Cowboys call it, a web back role. I'll call it the Lance Dunbar, Lucky Whitehead souped-up version of it. He'll get a lot of carries. He'll get a lot of receptions as well. He's not going to get 12 to 24 like Stephen Jones says when he has his silly moments out there. Good old silly Stephen there saying things that don't make sense. He's not going to get 12 to 24. I think 12 is the max if you count kickoffs and punt returns. But he'll play a nice role for the Cowboys as a dynamic weapon the team hasn't really had. More or less what they wanted Ryan Switzer to be, even though he's not that type of player. So I am curious to see what happens going forward with Tavon Austin's role. All right, folks, I am Tom Downey. Follow me on Twitter at WhatGoingDowney for more Cowboys coverage, and we'll come back with some more Cowboys training camp notes here. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, The Guild. All right, folks, we'll keep it rolling here with our Cowboys training camp preview. On to the defensive side of the ball, namely DT. Malik Collins, he's on the PUP list. David Irving, he's suspended. And the DT depth was not in great shape to begin with. You are now banking heavily on Jihad Ward having a breakout year for you and getting by with a Dayton Jones or a Brian Price as your other DT if Collins continues to miss time. I don't like that. I put it as a 9. I am very concerned about this team's run defense. They're asking a lot out of really not immensely talented DTs. Yeah, Ward and Jones were former high-round picks, but there's a reason they were cast off from other teams. So it's a big concern for me. I would not mind adding another DT, maybe a Jonathan Hankins, for example, but it is something to monitor throughout camp and how they fare against a really, really good Cowboys offensive line and ground game. Speaking of DT and the defensive line, we're all going to be watching how Randy Gregory fares this year in camp. He is back finally after having one career sack. It did come against Jason Peters, to be fair. He's played in 2 of the Cowboys' last 32 games. That's not very many. And yet some of you think Gregory's going to have 12 sacks this year. I love the optimism. I really do. But we got to pump the brakes here a little bit on Gregory. I don't think he's going to play that much on base downs. If you think he's going to make an impact, it probably comes on third downs. You let him blitz alongside DeMarcus Lawrence, alongside David Irving, and maybe a Malik Collins or a Taco or something crazy on the inside. I am going to put the over-under again at like 4.5. Anything above that is just too much to expect from a guy who has one career sack and hasn't played in several months, if not really it's years at this point. So let's pump the brakes on a bit on Gregory, even though you can hope he has a big year. Speaking of defensive end, I am curious to see if there's one spot available. Now, I think the suspension of David Irving allows for Dallas to take one more defensive end beyond just Randy, DeMarcus Lawrence, Taco Charlton, and Tyrone Crawford. The defensive end battle is going to be an intriguing one to me, or for me to watch, even though it's not a big concern for me. These are going to be your top 5 guys. Those 5 guys, I think, DeMarcus Lawrence, Crawford, Taco, Dorrance Armstrong, and Gregory, I think are going to make the roster. That leaves maybe one spot for a Coney Ealy versus Charles Tapper battle. Now, Ealy can play some DT, and that's a big deal. Tapper, I think, has more raw upside as an edge rusher, but he's got to actually stay healthy. So that battle right there, even though it's not an instrumental one, is going to be a good one to watch. On to linebackers now, namely, just let them all stay healthy. Sean Lee, we know, is constantly battling some type of injury. Jalen Smith, we know what happened to his knee, but he is working without his brace, which is a very good sign. And then first-round pick Leighton Vander Esch, well, he missed most of OTAs and minicamp with an ankle injury. That's not what you want to see if you're the Cowboys. You need those 3 guys healthy. Now, the depth, I think, is fine. Joe Thomas, Damian Wilson. You can throw in a Justin March Lillard as well. Those are fine guys to have at the number 4 through 6 spots, but it requires you to have those first 3, or at least 2 of the guys, healthy each game. Hopefully both LVE and Jalen have that emergence type of years. And I want to know who will have more tackles. Will it be LVE, Vander Esch, or will it be Jalen Smith? Give me a 1 for LVE and a 2 for Jalen. I think it'll be Jalen because I think Jalen Smith will play a little bit more, at least early on, in passing downs, and we'll see him blitz a little bit more as well. All right, folks, if you want all the best Cowboys coverage in one spot on YouTube, subscribe to our new Cowboys Report YouTube channel at chatsports.com/CowboysTV. Already passed the 1K mark. Thank you guys very much for that. 2K subscribers is next up. Again, go to chatsports.com/CowboysTV. It'll take you right into the subscribe page. All right, we'll take it now to the defense. And the secondary is in great shape, but everyone still is talking about will an Earl Thomas trade happen. A training camp holdout, I think, does help those chances. And as you mentioned earlier on in the show today, the report is that Thomas is not going to show up for camp. But even though it seems like it's Earl Thomas and the Cowboys, that's not where this leverage is at. This is between Earl Thomas and between the Seattle Seahawks. That's what's going on here. The Cowboys are kind of almost a secondary option right now. It's up to Seattle to say, okay, we're going to offer you a deal. Okay, we'll trade you. Okay, just show up. I think the reality is Seattle is not making a decision. That's why Thomas is all upset. That's why there are all these reports about him asking about the Cowboys and Oakland to come trade for him. So that's been a concern there. It will continue to be a waiting game until A, Earl Thomas is wearing a star, or B, he gets a big fat new contract from the Seattle Seahawks. So let me know, guys, if you want Dallas to trade for Earl Thomas. Give me an A for a yes and a B for a no. One last one, not really as a player, more of a coach side, Garrett and his hot seat. Now, he is on the hot seat this year. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If Dallas fails to make the playoffs, I think Garrett is on the outs. After a bad year last year, though there were some issues there, the Cowboys are expecting a playoff return for Garrett and this team. If that doesn't happen, unless there are a bunch of injuries, I think Garrett's on the outs. Now, it's obviously not for this year that they're not going to fire him, but I think if Dallas misses the playoffs this coming season, I think it's a yes, and I think Garrett is gone, and the Cowboys look elsewhere for a new head coach. All right, folks, give me your questions in the comments for an upcoming mailbag on Facebook and on YouTube. We'll do that live on Sunday. Keep the comments coming. I know you guys love this segment, and I do as well. So give me those questions or tweet them to me at WhatGoingDowney. And until next time, we'll see ya.